recent study found that 53% of Americans consider budgeting and expense tracking as their most valuable financial lesson, where one of the best investors of all time, Warren Buffett, says if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. So understand that if you don't prioritize your savings, the odds of building true wealth to live off of one day are as slim as winning the lottery without even having a ticket. Knowing that, let's first go over the 50-30-20 budgeting rule. Now, this is one of the most popular budgeting rules discussed on the internet, where it simply comes down to prioritizing 50% of your income toward needs, 30% toward wants, and 20% toward savings. And so to understand each category, needs typically refers to expenses like housing, groceries, utilities, transportation. Don't forget essential clothes, but I'm not talking about things like Gucci flip-flops. And then for the 30% wants, these areas could include travel, entertainment, dining out, any other hobbies that you may be interested in, but I still wouldn't recommend getting Gucci flip-flops. But from there, 20% would then go to savings, and this would include areas like an emergency fund, debt repayments, a down payment for a house, and investments that are crucial toward gaining financial freedom. Now understand that these brackets are just generic examples. Everyone has a different position, and you may need to save more, and depending on that, you could change the categories based on your situation. So because I think 20% is on the lower end, let's just say that you want to be more aggressive with your savings, you may want to aim for 50% needs, 15% wants, and 35% towards savings. And no matter the situation, I highly recommend setting up auto transfers to your savings and investment accounts so that you can guarantee the money is continuously going there on a recurring basis. But the biggest takeaway with understanding this rule is that you can create a structured approach so that you can visualize where the money you earn is actually going towards. And I know budgeting does take time, but if you analyze your spending even over the past month and categorize it within 3 categories, you may be shocked to see the amount of subscriptions that you should cancel or expenses that you knew you should not have made. And also realize that many budgeting rules are much harder to implement if you do not have a fixed income. So understand that what must be saved first is extremely important to determine what purchases are truly worth buying thereafter. And speaking of saving first, the next budgeting rule is the pay yourself first method. Now this method is where you prioritize saving and investing first before you spend on anything else. In fact, Warren Buffett simply says, do not save what is left after spending, but spend what is left after saving. And so an approach for this method is that you could start having your income go toward retirement accounts like the 401k and Roth IRA, building an emergency fund, paying off high interest debt like credit card debt, areas to invest for long-term growth, save for short-term goals like a down payment on a house, then cover your living expenses, and with what's left, you'd spend on the wants. So to simplify this, let's just say that you have an after-tax income of $5,000 per month. Let's say that $1,000 you have going toward retirement accounts, $500 into an emergency fund that you want to build up, $500 towards paying off debt, $500 towards long-term investments, another $500 towards short-term savings, and then the rest of the $2,000 for rent, bills, food, and other things that you want. Of course, you will want to adjust this based on your position and what you prioritize the most, but understand that once you select the amounts that should be set to go to each particular area, setting up automatic transfers is going to be your best friend. You see, as simple as it sounds, if you had $500 automatically set to go to your Roth IRA every single month and you invested in the S&P 500 and just let it ride, if history continues where the US economy grows at 10% on average, then after 30 years, you would have a $1 million portfolio, and after the eligible age of 59 and a half, that would be completely tax-free. Of course, that's a long time and you'd want money quicker, but this requires nearly zero time or energy and at least ensures that you have a safer retirement than if you didn't do so. I recently made a video on how much you should save for retirement by age that I highly recommend checking out, but the reason that this is so important is because the sooner you start, the more time you have for your money to grow, because the first year you do this, your investments would grow $270 based on the averages, but the last year alone, the portfolio would have grown $93,000. But all in all, with the pay yourself first strategy, this is a great method for those that want to prioritize and automate your money to go toward the right places that will improve your financial future. I'll also mention that when it comes to your savings, I highly recommend high yield savings accounts, especially for an emergency fund, because your savings can then earn around a 4% of interest, where your cash with big banks like Bank of America or Chase only earns you a 0.01% of interest. So making that change could easily make you an additional few hundreds of dollars to even thousands of dollars just by a few clicks of a button. So if you are interested to get started, I'll have a link in the description below to some of the top options in the market, which I will say, depending on the one you choose, I may earn a commission for it, which is greatly appreciated. But while I mention all these budgeting rules, understand that not one specific rule is going to be the perfect one for you, but the point here is more so to learn bits and pieces from each rule so that you can implement a strategy for yourself. So knowing that, let's now go on to the number 3, that is the zero-based budgeting rule. The method behind this is that you take every dollar that you earn and assign each dollar to an exact area that you plan to spend your money on. So to simplify this, the reason this rule is called zero-based is because the formula is income minus expenses that ends up equaling to 0. Now you could easily write or type this out in broad categories so that you can get a better feeling for your finances, but let's say your current income is $5,000 per month. You would then want to categorize each of your expenses and how much you should prioritize toward each. So just to throw basic numbers out there, the first may be rent at $1,500 per month, investments at $1,000, savings at $500, groceries at $500, paying off debt at $500, insurance at $300, gas at $200, and whatever other categories you may spend your money on, like let's say wants, at $500. Of course, this is not a perfect example and it's going to depend on your position, but if you understand how much you're spending in each particular area, with this, you'll then know how much you can truly spend on the wants. Now, especially if you have a fixed income, this is going to be much easier to plan out, but if your income varies every month, this process will require much more time, but it will show you exactly how you are going to spend. So the goal with this method is to prevent you from making any purchases outside of what you initially planned within your budget. Personally, this is a bit more advanced and time consuming than I would want, but just understand the reasons behind the rule, because if you allocate each dollar to an exact expense, you'll then know exactly where each dollar you spend goes. But knowing that, the next rule, number 4, is the envelope method. Now this method has been around for a while and is definitely meant for those that are hardcore savers or that are in need of true saving. The reason is because this refers to actually getting physical envelopes and placing cash or checks in them based on the amounts you expect to spend in that category each month. So let's say that every month you have to pay electricity, food, gas, mortgage, water, internet, and car payment. The idea here is that you literally place the exact amounts for each, and if anything, you'd ideally want to be on the higher end of expectations, but let's just say an example where you have $150 going toward electricity, $500 towards food, $200 towards gas, $1,500 mortgage, $100 water, $400 towards a car payment, and $60 towards internet, and whatever else you decide. Now this is obviously out of style, but it is a known fact that seeing true physical cash in what you are paying has been known to have a psychological effect on your budgeting skills. But because this is less realistic in the digital world now, I'm about to go over what you could potentially do, but understand the main point here with this method is that you can visually see what the main areas that you are spending your money on and where it is going every single month. So if you are in need of some very strict hardcore savings, you could first write down every expense that you have to pay, especially the recurring ones that are monthly like utility bills or subscriptions, and rather than auto pay and just putting it on a credit card to pay it back later, and then you end up having credit card debt, you would instead turn off auto pay, write down the date for each expense that is due, and then mark it down every time you pay it. This is of course more tedious, but it's also how bills used to be paid in the past before auto pay was available, and credit card debt blew through the roof, or I guess I should say the ceiling. Now personally, I don't use this method, but if you are struggling or need to seriously monitor your expenses, it's at least something to be aware of. With that said, the last one on this list I think you may find great value from, and that is the value-based budgeting rule. Now the reason I like this rule is because it is more personalized based on what provides you the most value rather than trying to cut all your expenses. Now there's no specific way that you have to approach this rule, but understand that the main fundamentals behind it could be very similar for nearly anyone. So rather than a simple 50, 30, 20% rule that you have to try and meet the exact percentages, try thinking about what provides you the most value. So let's say that financial freedom, health, and experiencing life are among your top priorities. The first thing you'll want to do is come up with the main types of expenses that you spend your money on and what you think could be changed. To give you a basic example, let's say that you spend $400 a month on eating out, $100 a month on subscriptions, $300 for shopping, $20 for the gym, $100 on travel, and $200 goes towards investing. These are all expenses that vary based on the value that you give them. And because we said that the values that you have, you most want to prioritize toward financial freedom, health, and experiencing life, you may want to cut back on eating out, cancel some unused subscriptions that you know you don't need or use, and try to spend less on shopping, especially for the things that you don't necessarily need. By doing that, you could have an extra $500 per month to spend on the things that you value more, such as upgrading your gym membership or go to a gym that you may prefer more. You would also have more to spend on travel and increase the amount that you are investing every single month. So this budgeting rule is really meant to help you see what you are currently spending your money on and what changes that you can make that best align with what you value most. Which I will say, this video covered a ton about trying to save more, but one thing I didn't mention that is something I personally aim for is to increase my income. You see, the more income that you're able to generate, the easier it will be for you to save and spend on the things that you need and also want. So I want to encourage not just smart saving, but that it could become much easier if you also work on advancing your skills, find a side hustle that you enjoy, or other ventures that could increase your income. But like I said, combining bits and pieces from each of these rules may greatly help you gain a better idea for budgeting. And if you are interested to start a high yield savings account, I created an entire spreadsheet I think you'll greatly benefit from that I'll have linked in the description below. Which if you're also interested to get started, I'll also have a link to some of the top options in the market if you want to learn more and get started. And as always, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notifications button for future content like this.